Welcome back, Pirate Crew. It's your captain, Yeehaw Yadam, and for today's video, we're getting excited for the pre-release of Pillars of Strength. For those of you that may or may not know, this upcoming weekend, starting Saturday, you guys should start seeing your LGSs incorporate the One Piece Set 3 pre-release. And for many of you, maybe that's your first set, maybe you're a returning player, and maybe you're trying to win that coveted winner card, right? So this time around, I'm going to be doing a video to give you guys kind of the tips, tricks, the tools necessary in order to win your pre-release, right? So I've been fortunate enough to win in set 1, in set 2, and now I'm going to be trying to go for the 3P and win in set 3. So if you're a new player or even if you're a returning player, oftentimes when you look at a set for the first time, it's pretty darn expansive, right? It's very difficult to go ahead and digest all the information that's getting thrown out at you. You look at all these cards, what is the curve of it? I don't know what's going on, how many blockers, how many 2Ks are in this set, and it just gets a little overwhelming. So the purpose of this video is to try to give you as much information as I can for the new set, so you guys are aware of all the cards that are available to you and specifically which cards you want to place in your deck. So starting off with the super pre-releases, or not the super, just a regular pre-release, the way that it works is that you're going to go and have to play a leader, right? The One Piece trading card game requires you to have a leader in your starting zone, but you're not restricted in a pre-release setting to its color combinations, right? So if you're playing Smoker, for example, your deck doesn't have to be just black. It can be any color combination that you want it to be. And that goes for every single leader in the game, which makes it really, really cool. The only issue is when you have already such powerful leaders that come in set 1 and set 2, it's very difficult to want to play any of the leaders that you pull in set 3, right? So if you wanted to play a leader from the third set, A, you have to pull it, and then B, you have to pray that it's a good leader. So these are the leaders that you have available to you, and these are any of these can be played in the pre-release setting. Now, I'll venture to say some of these are better in a pre-release setting than others, and I'll even venture even further to say that some are just better than others, period. So without getting too political, on what is the best leader, let's talk about what leaders I would bring to the pre-release event, right? I'm going to go ahead and narrow it down to these 5 leaders as they are just generically good leaders. I would even narrow it down further, but I'm trying to give you guys kind of a range of the color combinations to play, right? So obviously Zoro. Why would I bring Zoro? His effect is really good. It's not restricted in a pre-release setting. You're going to be giving 1K across the board. So the Dawn that you put on your leader, which you'll probably be doing anyways throughout the game, now applies to your character cards, and that's pretty darn strong. He's a 5-lifer. That's also really strong because in a pre-release setting, it's very difficult to play 4-life heroes or the Whitebeard leader, which is a 6K leader, and it's very, very powerful in the meta game. The fact that you're going to be taking 1 card a turn and you might not have enough blockers, you might not have enough 2K to combo with, or events, you'll probably just end up losing the game eventually to someone that just has a 5-lifer that can go ahead and deal with the damage that you're dealing with your leader. Now, that's not to say that you shouldn't play Edward Newgate. He's probably pretty darn good too, but he's more situational than the leaders that we have here. Zoro, like I said, genuinely just good. King sees no play in the metagame, but in a pre-release setting, he's pretty darn good, as your games are more, they're probably going to go long. Both players are going to be at 10 Dawn, and you're going to be able to facilitate King's effect, which is very, very powerful at the 10 Dawn setting. Now, your leader is going to be a vanilla for like 4 turns, but after those 4 turns, your leader is really good at clearing the board. Whenever you turn your character sideways and your opponent is forced to interact with your characters, you can easily defend them, and then they cannot easily defend back. So if you want to play purple, want to play something different that you don't normally get to play, check out King. He's pretty darn cool in this setting. And Luffy again, he's just a versatile leader. His effect isn't anything like, whoa, that's crazy, burn a life from Kaido. But the fact that he's just genuinely good, can go ahead and use an exhausted Dawn for a character offensively. He's very easy at making your deck feel more fluid, and he's going to be doing that in the pre-release as well as he can do in the metagame. He's a 5-lifer. His effect is versatile. Yeet. Eustace Captain Kid, the fact that sometimes you can't close out these games because you don't have the damage, and especially this set, but we'll get to that later, you might not have the damage to close a game. Now, Eustace Captain Kid will always have the damage to close out a game, as your games are always going long. By the time you get to 10 Dawn, you can go double attack. If that doesn't end the game, you double attack again. And if you can defend your opponent for 2 turns, 3-turn cycle, then you're for sure winning, because all you have to do is go leader, 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 swing out with your board. And at that time, that's a lot of pressure, and he did really good at pre-release 1 and 2, so I'm expecting him to do well in pre-release number 3. And Crocodile's here because if you want to play some blue, I wouldn't play Doflamingo in this set, as we have, I don't think, any new Warlords, but Crocodile actually has an ability that can be used in this set. I wouldn't play Nami, I wouldn't play Flamingo, I wouldn't play Ivankov, so Crocodile would be the character of choice. He's a 5-lifer with an effect that is somewhat versatile. He is kind of limited, that you don't want to use his effect too early, but if you're able to find some good removal cards like Sogeking, Katakuri, and you can combo it off with your Croc, that might just be pretty darn cool. So if you guys have access to all of these leaders, I would probably keep them in a back pocket. And if you want to play even more situational leaders like Magellan or Edward Newgate, you bring those as well, as you just have more in your arsenal that you can go ahead and make your deck very fine-tuned, right? Because you don't know what you're going to pull, but you can make sure that you know which leaders you have ahead of time. So me personally, I'd probably stick to Zoro or Luffy. I don't play Eustace, Captain Cringe, because that just ain't me, but I'd play these two guys, and I might even play King if I can find an alt art. But those are probably the three that I would venture to say are the ones that I would bring. Then here we've got the 2Ks. Now looking at set 3, we have to always be cognizant, like there's a ton of cards and a ton of information given to you, but how many 2Ks are available in the set? Well, there are 7, and that's usually the case for every set that comes out. They kind of limit the amount of 2Ks they give colors, because if you keep giving very specific colors just better cards, you're just gonna make the game significantly worse, right? So in this set, they kind of calmed down. They gave 2Ks to black, 2Ks to yellow, no 2Ks to red. They don't really need it. 1 for green, 1 for purple, and 1 for blue, right? And even though they're 2Ks, and 2Ks genuinely you'll be placing them in your deck regardless, there are some 2Ks here that are just better than others. That's just the way that life goes. And I venture to say that this Kaya, the fact that she is a 1-drop that can filter your hand, that's pretty darn good. Strusen, not good. Pitch a card to destroy a 1-drop, that ain't it, chief. He's just gonna be a 2K that's stuck in my hand. Sanji, a 2K that can attack and draw a card? Yes, please. Hachan, fantastic stat line, but the trigger is East Blue leader only. Now, in the pre-release setting, usually you're not restricted. That's the idea. They want you to play any card with any leader and just go ham. Unfortunately, if a leader or if a character card says requires things in brackets, that's restricted. If you're not playing the ace leader and you cast Flame Emperor, you best believe it's not doing much. Or if you have Hachan in your life and you want to trigger it, but you're playing Zoro, it's just not coming out. So you have to be cognizant of those things, even though you'll probably still play Hachan just because he's a 2K. Just understand that if you're not playing any of the East Blue leaders that have been revealed in set 3, he won't get the double dip of the trigger effect. Now we've got Khalifa. Khalifa is supposed to facilitate the Iceberg strategy, but I really don't recommend you play Iceberg. But if you want, she's there. She will just be a 2K with a 4K power line, which is really solid, similar to Hachan. Then we've got the Black Khalifa. Now, Black Khalifa, if you have a heavy CP9 engine, she's fantastic. She is just well statted. You can probably summon this as an attacker, but if you want to summon any 2K as an attacker, it's probably going to either be Sanji or Virgo. My goodness, this Virgo is ridiculous in the pre-release setting because he says Dawn times 1, this character cannot be KO'd by battle. And in a format where you have very limited removal, that guy is immortal. Now, is it worth summoning an immortal 5-drop or keeping a 2K in hand? It's very difficult to state, and it's very gameplay dependent, but this card's really good. If you have multiple Virgos, I would reckon you guys play this in your deck. He's going to be pretty darn good at dealing with a lot of the mid game, and he's going to just be able to chip out your opponent consistently. If you have the Zoro leader, he's a 7K that can be destroyed if you put 1 Dawn on him and 1 on your leader, so my goodness are you gaming. But these are the 2Ks. You'll probably shove all of these into your deck anyways. Just remember that Strusen, Hachan, and both of the Khalifas will probably be used as combo power, whereas Sanji, Kaya, and Virgo can be a little bit more versatile. Regardless of which, be careful when you drop a 2K because you might not have much more counter power in your hand. Here are the blockers. Now, there are 11 blockers that come out in the set, 10 that are true blockers, and Bluno, who is a pseudo blocker. Now, Bluno requires 1 Dawn investment, but he's a 6K blocker. Now, there is no other big boy blocker in this set. They're all kind of little blockers, little weenie blockers, which is fine. There's not a lot of removal outside of Marco that can deal with any of these guys. So don't be too afraid. But Bluno being a 6k is really, really important because that creates a different threshold that your opponent has to interact with you with, right? Just think about how powerful Borzolino is. Borzolino makes your opponent have to swing for 8s, 6, which is already taxing your opponent's Dawn curve, and that is almost always just good enough. Bluno can do the same thing, and if you have a CP9 engine, he can blast your opponent, right? So other really, really powerful card that you might want to think about including in your deck is this Bluno. And the rest of these, you want to think about them as just 1k counters and or blockers. It's really, really cool that this set has a lot of blockers that have counter power, because the set before had a lot of blockers that just had this sort of stat line, right? Which is no counter power blocker. And even though he has a dual effect, he requires you to have the Galilei. So that's not happening. And this one as well, even though she has a really cool effect, it's just sometimes that one counter power is more important. So you want to facilitate, or you want to prioritize these other blockers before you can prioritize these, as well as the fact that, again, there are other blockers that are better than others. So if they have the 3k power stat line, you want to even value those even higher, right? So you have the blue one, the black one, and the yellow one. And the yellow one has a really interesting on-play effect, and Fukudo just says, screw you, Marco, I'm stuck here, good luck summoning and doing anything, right? So Fukudo is really cool as well, and it can honestly combo off of Bluno. It can attack, it's a 1k, he attack, he protect, he does everything, he's the meme. So look at your blockers and be aware of how many you can place into your deck, right? And most of the time, it's probably all of them. Lastly, we have the vanillas, right? So we have a bunch of vanillas that come in the set, and I want to just show you their curve line, right? Because in the previous sets, we've had vanillas that are 7 costed 9Ks, 6 costed 8Ks, big vanilla. In this set, we've kind of toned it down, and we've unfortunately toned it into a section that I'm not a very big fan of. The 1-drop and the true drops seem to be the vast amount of the vanillas. We've got a good amount of 3s and 4s, and it caps out at 5. So when you look at this, what do you think to yourself might just be good enough? And unfortunately, it's looking like Zoro, right? 4Ks are considered very, very good in Zoro, and we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 that we can use because of the fact that with 1 Dawn on my leader, now they're just all attacking stat line. Really, really good. You have 2 1-drops, so obviously 1-drops might not be, and these are vanillas. There's other 1-drops in this set as well that aren't vanilla, but that's in terms of vanilla that have the 3k 1-drop stat line, you've only got 2, so that's a blessing. And we've got a bunch of 3-drops that can become 6ks, 7ks, 8ks. So you have to think of these cards, and the thing that concerns me the most is that there's a lot of 2-drops. So that to me signifies that maybe this is a Zoro leaned pre-release, right? Because I just want to shove as many of these as I can in my deck and then just kind of use them offensively. Funnily enough, this one even has the CP9, I think, tagline. So if you have a really cool CP9 deck, you can play this plus Zoro, and you can do some really wild things. Lastly, I want to show you guys what I would venture to say are the better cards in the set. I didn't put Bluno here, but that's my mistake. Bluno should probably be here as well. But these are just genuinely good cards, and almost are always auto-includes in your deck. So I put 6 King Pistol and Gum Gum Jet Gatling as they're like the lowest tier on this entire page, because they are technically counter power, and there's not a lot of counter power in this set, but they probably aren't good enough, honestly. And if you want to play them and if you have space that you're trying to just get to the allocated 40, shove in a 6 King Pistol, sure. Will it win you the game? Probably not. Could it? Maybe. I know I'm not doing a great job at selling it, but that's why I'm telling you guys these are probably on the lower tier. But Fukudo, Virgo, Kaya, 3000 Worlds, Sogeking. My goodness, this card is cracked in this setting, but the fact that it's a secret makes it really unpredictable if you'll be able to even get it. Butchie, Chu, Krieg, my goodness, is Krieg crazy. Marco, the Mina Zebra, Katakuri, Cracker. Man, those cards are good. If you have multiples of any of those cards that I just named, yeah, sure, put them in your deck. If you have multiples, you're also cheating, but whatever. I'm just memeing, but definitely if I had 2 Crackers, I would put that in my deck, or multiple Pero Sparrow, and I had the Pudding. I can make a really heavy Big Mom engine deck, which is really, really cool. But these are probably the cards that I want to go ahead and get to. I think if I had a Sogeking, I would be really, really happy, because this card is super duper tempo, and it looks like this pre-release more than others is going to be mid-game centric. So I think the last little thing I want to do to wrap up the video is show you guys an example of a deck that I would probably play at the pre-release. Now, I can't simulate exactly what I go ahead and get from my card pools, but there's nothing too crazy in here. So I wanted to show you guys what this would look like. And I think this will be able to show that, right? So I'm going to just zoom out real quick. Ooh, very zoomed. Right, so it's basically mono vanillas, really low to the ground, and I'm playing the Zoro leader. I don't know why he's here, but this would be a Zoro type deck, right? So I want to go ahead and look at my curves. A lot of 1-drops, as many 2-drops as I can play, a bit of 3, a bit of 4, and a bit of 5, right? I want my curve to shift a little bit towards the lower side because there's just not a lot of late game. I can't assume I'm going to get a Sogeking. I can't assume I'm going to get an Fujitora. I'm not going to assume that I'm going to get a Katakuri, but if I do get those cards, yeah, I'd probably play them. But I can't assume that I'm going to get the majority of these cards. A card that I really didn't talk about earlier was Sanji's Pilaf. 3 mana, draw 2. That's kind of good. It could be good. But my main purpose, or the main thing that I want to do, is just summon as many 1-drops and 2-drops as possible. Some of these are not vanillas and have really cool effects, such as this one right here. I'm going to zoom in to look at the name. Haruda. That card's pretty darn cool. So there's a lot of interesting things you can do in your deck, and I think that it's going to give you a lot of versatility. This is what a Zoro deck would look like. This is probably similar to, if I just had these cards, I probably would play them in Captain Kid, I'd play them in Luffy, I'd play them in almost any deck, because this just seems like a very good tempo deck that could get you a couple of wins in the pre-release. So I did my best at what it would be like, simulating a very bad set of pools and making what I would think is a playable deck out of it. And even if you look at this deck, right, let's look at the specific amount of the power curve. The majority of our power is in the 3 and the 5, and a lot in the 4, which is exactly where we want to be. But we have a cost curve, and then we have a bunch of like key terms here. What's most important is that we only have 4 2K counters, which is what I'm assuming is going to be the average. The rest of my deck is just 1K counters, very few events, and there's a couple cards that just genuinely don't have counter. So when you look at that to yourself, in the pre-release setting, you know what number is really darn good? 5. You know what's even better than 5? 6. If you can keep hitting someone with 6, eventually they're going to run out of any hand size, because usually in the metagame we're used to hitting people for 7s, right? 7 is a number that they're like, oof, I have to dump 2 cards. But in a pre-release setting, you can go hit them for 6 and they'll maybe drop a 2K. But that's it. They won't have many more 2Ks, or they shouldn't, right? Statistically. And then you can just 6, that's 2 cards, and they're just going to have to end up taking the damage. If you combo it up with a couple banished cards like Kaku and Minnow Zebra, oh my goodness, we are cooking. Now imagine these guys with the Zoro leader. You have a banished 6K, that's remove 2 cards from hand. You have a banished 7K, that's remove 3 cards from hand. Ooh, man, it's going to be kind of a struggle. The good thing to note is that we do have a lot of blockers, so don't just assume that Zoro is going to run rampant. It's going to be, you're going to have to really think about your plays and expect a lot of mirrors if you play a deck or this type of leader, because that's just what the pre-release setting is. It's going to be a lot of Zoro, Luffy, and Eustace Captain Kid. So be ready to play that over and over until they go ahead and change the rules for the pre-release. I hope this video helps you guys win your winner card. If you are able to win one, it'd be really cool if you came back to the video and say, I did it, Dad. Not necessarily that, but like something along those lines. Like, I got it. That'd be pretty cool. If you guys like this sort of content, make sure to leave a like. If you have anything you want to say in the comments, make sure to leave a comment. This is a very different type of video for me. So if you like this sort of thing, I'll make sure to produce more set content or preset content, which I think is really interesting. And as always, guys, if you haven't joined the Pirate Crew, and please hit that subscribe button and consider joining, because we're going to be making some more OP content for you guys. So we'll see you guys on the next one. Peace.